Welcome back to the Panel's Choice. Here we ask each panel member to pick a topic from this week that they feel is important to discuss. We will start with Terry's pick. An email exchange between the officials at the National School Board Association suggests that the Biden Secretary of Education, Miguel Cardona, was behind a letter that likened parents to domestic terrorists. Terry, you have a response to this news.
It's absolutely shocking and jarring, but frankly, we shouldn't be surprised that the Biden administration views parents and families as the enemies of our democracy, to trademark. Listen, they're telling us something very real here, which is that they view parents as the enemy. They view parents as domestic terrorists. This should require a full-fledged investigation into the Department of Education to see how deeply embedded this is. What did Joe Biden know? We've already called at American Principles Project, we've already called on Miguel Cardona to resign, and we're encouraging people to sign our petition as well. But he needs to resign. This needs to be a full-fledged investigation. Just how deeply embedded into our federal government is this? This is, just to be clear, this is the federal government weaponizing itself against the American people.
Well, it's interesting because most people assume that the Secretary of Education wants that job because they care about education, or they care about children, or they care about natural things that you would think someone as a teacher potentially might care about. But this letter goes to show that they clearly have a different agenda, and it's not education.
It's to control our kids, right? They want our kids' minds, they want their hearts, they want their souls, and they view parents as being in the way, right? Like the science and the data is very clear. Where parents are active and engaged in their kids' education, that's where students are performing the best, and vice versa. Where they're not engaged and active, that's where students are failing. And this is just very telling. They view parents as the enemy. And let's get back to where this all started. This all started in Loudoun County, Virginia, just one county over from where I live. And a parent was arrested there because the school board was covering up the sexual assault of his daughter. Right? This is enraging at every level. People need to go to jail over this type of stuff, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And then the media makes it sound like, oh, parents are out of control and outrageous. They're domestic terrorists. Let's put the FBI on them. Because the father's daughter was sexually assaulted in a bathroom and the school covered it up. Whole thing is crazy. Thank you so much for the topic. Next, we have Dr. Shea's pick. The Taiwan chip industry has become indispensable for both China and the United States. Shea, why is the U.S. concerned about this as China cranks up its intimidation of Taiwan?
Well, this is an issue that we have not been talking about yet. It's extremely important because the U.S. and China both depend on this computer chip industry. Taiwan dominates the global manufacturing of it. They are responsible for over 90% of output. And here's why it's so important. These computer chips are used in the technologies that are most advanced that we use every day. Military weapons, artificial intelligence, stealth technology, hypersonic missiles, cell phones, medical diagnostic tools like for COVID. So this is a very simple, very serious thing because the manufacturing plants of these chips are on the west coast of Taiwan, where China, facing China, and where China would most likely land if they decide to invade Taiwan completely. They're already pushing a lot of military oppression and pressure on Taiwan right now. So the problem is the American economy will be devastated if we're cut off to access to these, not to mention our military preparedness. So this is a very serious issue. Throw a figure out there for you. The semiconductor industry has estimated that if for some reason access or global output is cut off, then it would actually halt electronic international supply chains. So what is the Biden administration going to do?
Well, that's a great question because we've already seen a slowing of it, a very severe slowing of it. People are having a hard time buying cars. Like who would have thought used cars are suddenly a hot commodity because no one can get new chips to go into their new cars. That supply chain's already struggling.
Yeah, that's right. So that is another issue, right? We could talk about that. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about that and inflation a little bit more. But my concern with the Biden administration is we have Sullivan and Blinken, kind of flexing their muscles saying, yeah, we're going to defend Taiwan against communism. But we have President Joe Biden saying that he does not support independence and that Taiwan's independence is up to Taiwan. So what is he going to do? We don't know. And it's just a real concern as we wait right now.
And I know it's a waiting game. What's your prediction? When are we going to see movement on this issue, good or bad? What should Americans be looking for when they try to figure out how the dominoes are going to fall?
Well, I think the main thing to kind of focus on right now is the fact that China is pushing into Taiwan already. We've had, was it like 1,000 airplanes that have gone into their air defense zones over the past year. They're putting more, they have upped their Navy game as well, pushing into Taiwan and really putting oppression on them. Plus, diplomacy and propaganda that is trying to influence the people and break their will. That was the thing I wanted to bring up.
Thank you very much for the topic. Derrick brings us this next pick. Afghanistan is still in disarray since Biden's withdrawal in August. The U.S. announced they're dedicating $308 million in aid, along with 1 million more COVID vaccines. Derrick, there are still more Americans who want to get out too.
Right, and so that article from CNN talked about they estimate it's about 80 Americans that are trying to get out. Who knows what the real number is? And you talked about the 308 million. That's in addition to what they've already given. We're up over 780 million since the withdrawal back in August.
And that's to a Taliban-run government. So he's paying the Taliban.
We don't even know where these funds are going. And of course, they're going to put their hand in it before it goes to the people who need it. And right now, as you say, the country is in disarray, and it's all because of our withdrawal, the debacle that happened. And one of a rock band, Pearl Jam. I don't know if you remember Pearl Jam.
I remember Pearl Jam, of course.
Even flow. But anyway, they and a couple of other groups are now partnered with a couple of organizations to try to bring awareness to what's going on over there, raise money for the people over in Afghanistan, because people are starving right now.
And it's terrifying to think, I don't know, terrifying is probably not the right word, but that our government is supposedly trusting the Taliban to distribute, $700 million in aid? I don't even know what to say to that. How do Americans actually make a difference, or what are we waiting for to happen before the country just implodes?
Leaving that kind of money to the Taliban to distribute is crazy. We can't even distribute money here in the United States. We still have people who are waiting on money from COVID, from relief, and so to think that the Taliban is going to distribute those funds is outrageous. But I'm just glad that like Pearl Jam and others are bringing awareness to the problems going on in Afghanistan, because again, this is our problem.
Right.
We left Afghanistan that way, and right now it does not look good for America on the world stage.
It doesn't. There's a number of groups, like some of the ones that you mentioned as well as others, that really are taking ownership of what our government is not taking ownership of, and stepping out to do the work that's necessary.
What's interesting about that is the government doesn't even want to acknowledge that these groups are trying to do this. And it's kind of like they're kind of slapping their hands like, no, don't do it. And it's crazy.
Right, or they've tried to block visas or block opportunities for them to go help.
And never before have we left Americans behind enemy lines. It's outrageous.
It is shameful. Thank you so much for the topic. All right, Chris Farrell's pick. U.S. Capitol Police Officer Lieutenant Michael Byrd, the officer who shot and killed Ashley Babbitt, claims he was investigated and exonerated by several agencies for his actions that day. However, the documents obtained by Judicial Watch contradict this claim. Chris, tell us the truth.
Sure. There's only one homicide on January 6th, and that was the death by gunfire of Ashley Babbitt. And the shooting was done by Lieutenant Byrd. I want to point out that there's been a flurry of reporting on this recently, and I'm gratified by that there's been attention paid to it. Some people are kind of coming to their senses about the fact that Lieutenant Byrd's shooting was unlawful, that it wasn't investigated, and that he got a pass, really. No other law enforcement officer involved in a deadly shooting will get the kind of pass that Lieutenant Byrd got. In normal instances, an outside law enforcement agency, so let's say a city cop shoots somebody, the county sheriff is normally called in to do a fair and clean evaluation to see if the shorthand term, if it was a righteous shooting, meaning that the use of deadly force was lawful. That did not happen in this case. And Judicial Watch obtained all of the records and documents concerning this shooting and did a release of all the records on October 13th of 2021. We are now in January 2022. And some people are suddenly kind of snapping to attention and saying, wow, this wasn't done like any other shooting in any other law enforcement agency in the country. Surprise, surprise.
Imagine that.
So I'm gratified that they're reporting on it now, but we disclosed all of these records and the fact that the shooting was unlawful and that the only homicide that day was at the hands of a Capitol Hill police officer. And so October, November, December, January, I think initially people were afraid to report on it and cover it. I think that they were afraid of being called insurrectionists or being disloyal or being smeared in some way by this crazy January 6th kangaroo court. But, you know, the facts are out, and I encourage everyone to go to the original source material at judicialwatch.org, read the police reports, read the interviews, look at the video. There's tons of material up there, and see that this is unlike any other police shooting in the country. And folks that protested police shootings elsewhere in the country, they're right to do so. They're free to do so. Where are the protests over the shooting by Lieutenant Byrd of an unarmed female veteran, 5'2", maybe 100 pounds, propped up in a windowsill with her arms and legs occupied? She posed no threat to anyone.
Right.
I was going to say what's also unlike any other shooting. So a black cop shot a white woman. Okay, I mean, think about that. And where is the outrage? But it's all been suppressed because it was January 6th, Donald Trump, and all that kind of stuff.
You're messing up the narrative, Derrick, okay? That's not the story. That's not the way it's supposed to go. Okay, don't go anywhere. When we come back from the break, we've got Don't Be Fooled and my closing argument. We'll be right back.